Have you ever wondered if there's a hidden key to unlocking financial abundance that's been right in front of us for thousands of years? What if I told you that an ancient practice, often misunderstood and overlooked, could revolutionize not just your finances, but your entire approach to life and spirituality? Are you ready to discover a principle so powerful that it has the potential to transform your relationship with money, with others, and with the divine? Take a moment to let those questions sink in. The answers might surprise you, challenge you, and ultimately change your life. Hello, dear friends. Welcome to our channel. Today, we're embarking on an extraordinary journey into the heart of a topic that has intrigued, confused, and sometimes even divided people for millennia: the biblical concepts of tithes and offerings. But this isn't just another religious discourse or financial advice video. No, what we're about to explore goes far deeper than that. We're going to uncover how the timeless wisdom found in the Bible can revolutionize our approach to money, generosity, and spiritual growth in ways you might never have imagined. Before we dive into this topic, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Your participation helps us spread this transformative message to more people. Let's get started. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Tithes and offerings? Isn't that just an outdated religious practice? Or worse, a way for churches to make money? If that's crossed your mind, you're not alone. These concepts have often been misunderstood or misrepresented. But what if I told you that when properly understood and applied, the principles behind tithes and offerings could be the very keys to unlocking not just financial freedom, but a life of purpose, impact, and deep spiritual fulfillment? Today, we're going to dive deep into what the Bible really says about tithes and offerings. We'll explore their historical context, their spiritual significance, and most importantly, how these ancient principles can be applied in our modern world for extraordinary results. Whether you're a seasoned believer, someone curious about biblical financial principles, or even a skeptic, I promise you'll find value in what we're about to discuss. You might be wondering, how can giving away my money possibly lead to financial abundance? Isn't that counterintuitive? It's a fair question, and one we'll address head-on. By the end of this video, you'll understand why some of the wealthiest and most successful people in the world attribute their prosperity to the practice of tithing and generous giving. But more than that, you'll see how these practices can enrich your life in ways that go far beyond your bank account. We'll start by laying a solid foundation, exploring the biblical origins and definitions of tithes and offerings. Then, we'll delve into their spiritual significance, uncovering the profound truths that lie at the heart of these practices. We'll tackle the practical aspects too, discussing how to apply these principles in your daily life, even if you're facing financial challenges or skepticism. But we won't stop there. We'll also address the tough questions and common objections people have about tithing and offerings. We'll look at real-life examples of how these principles have transformed lives, and we'll explore how they can be adapted to our modern context, including the digital age and the gig economy. So, are you ready to embark on a journey that could potentially transform your financial future, deepen your spiritual life, and open up new possibilities for impact and fulfillment? Great! Let's dive in and uncover the powerful truths about tithes and offerings that have been hiding in plain sight all along. Let's start by defining our terms. What exactly do we mean when we talk about tithes and offerings? The word tithe comes from an Old English word meaning tenth. In biblical terms, tithing refers to the practice of giving 1/10 of one's income to God, typically through the local church or religious organization. It's a principle that predates the Mosaic Law and continues to be practiced by many believers today. But here's where it gets interesting. Tithing isn't just about money. It's a profound spiritual practice that acknowledges God as the source of all our blessings. When we tithe, we're essentially saying, God, I recognize that everything I have comes from you, and I'm returning a portion to you as an act of worship and gratitude. This shift in perspective can be truly transformative. Now, let's look at some key biblical passages that talk about tithing. In Malachi 3:10 we read, "Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be room enough to store it." This verse is fascinating for several reasons. First, it's one of the few places in the Bible where God actually challenges us to test Him. It's as if God is saying, I dare you to try this and see what happens. This is a bold invitation that speaks to God's confidence in this principle. Secondly, it promises an overflow of blessings, not just financial, but blessings of all kinds. This suggests that the impact of tithing goes far beyond our bank accounts. Another important passage is found in Leviticus 27:30, which states, "A tithe of everything from the land, whether grain from the soil or fruit from the trees, belongs to the Lord. It is holy to the Lord." This verse establishes the principle that the tithe is not ours to keep, it already belongs to God. This challenges our notion of ownership and invites us to see ourselves as stewards rather than owners of our resources. But tithing isn't just an Old Testament concept. In Matthew 23:23, Jesus affirms the practice of tithing while emphasizing the importance of justice, mercy, and faithfulness. He says, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give 1/10 of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin. But you have neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former." This passage shows that while tithing is important, it should be part of a larger lifestyle of righteousness and compassion. Now, you might be wondering, if the tithe belongs to God, what exactly are offerings? Great question. While tithes are a specific percentage, 10% of our income, offerings are voluntary gifts given above and beyond the tithe. They're an expression of gratitude, worship, or support for a specific cause or need. Offerings allow us to respond to God's goodness and to the needs around us with generosity and compassion. The Bible is full of examples of people giving offerings. One of the most famous is the story of the widow's mite in Mark 12:41-44. Jesus observes a poor widow putting 2 small copper coins into the temple treasury and declares that she has given more than all the others because she gave out of her poverty, while they gave out of their wealth. This story teaches us a profound lesson about the nature of giving. It's not about the amount, it's about the heart behind the gift. God values our willingness to give sacrificially more than the actual size of our contribution. This challenges our tendency to compare our giving to others or to think that small gifts don't matter. In God's economy, every act of genuine, heartfelt giving is significant. Another powerful example of offering in the Bible is found in Exodus 35:36, where the Israelites bring free will offerings for the construction of the tabernacle. The people gave so generously that Moses actually had to command them to stop giving because they had more than enough. This story illustrates the power of a community united in generous giving towards a common purpose. These biblical examples challenge our modern notions of giving. In a world that often encourages us to hoard and accumulate, the Bible presents a radically different approach, one of generosity and trust in God's provision. It invites us to see giving not as a loss or a sacrifice, but as a joyful participation in God's work in the world. But let's address the elephant in the room. You might be thinking, this all sounds great in theory, but we're living in tough economic times. How can I possibly afford to give away 10% of my income, let alone additional offerings? It's a valid concern and one that many people struggle with. The cost of living is rising, debts are mounting for many, and financial uncertainty seems to be the norm rather than the exception. However, those who practice tithing often report a surprising phenomenon. Their 90% seems to go further than their previous 100%. It's as if the act of tithing activates a spiritual principle of multiplication in their finances. Now, I'm not suggesting that tithing is a get-rich-quick scheme or a magical formula for instant wealth. That would be a gross misrepresentation of this biblical principle. Instead, tithing is about aligning our hearts and our finances with God's purposes. So how does this work in practice? First, tithing often leads to better financial management. When we commit to giving the first 10% of our income, it forces us to be more intentional and disciplined with the remaining 90%. We become better stewards of our resources, more aware of our spending habits, and more likely to make wise financial decisions. Secondly, tithing cultivates a mindset of abundance rather than scarcity. When we give regularly, we're constantly reminded that we have enough to share. This can shift our entire perspective on money and resources, leading to greater contentment and less anxiety about finances. Thirdly, tithing and giving offerings have profound spiritual benefits. They help us break free from the grip of materialism and the endless cycle of wanting more. When we give, we're declaring that our security doesn't come from our bank account, but from God. This shift in perspective can be incredibly liberating. Moreover, tithing fosters a sense of partnership with God in His work on earth. When we give to our local church or to ministries doing good work, we become active participants in spreading hope, alleviating suffering, and sharing the message of God's love with others. This sense of purpose and impact can bring a level of fulfillment that no amount of personal spending can match. But let's get practical. How can we apply these principles in our daily lives, especially if we're new to the concept of tithing or if we're facing financial challenges? First, if you've never tithed before, start where you are. You don't have to jump straight to 10% if that feels overwhelming. Begin with a percentage you're comfortable with and gradually increase it as you see God's faithfulness in your life. Remember, tithing is about the heart more than the amount. Second, be consistent. It's better to give a smaller amount regularly than to give sporadically. Consistency helps build the habit of giving and allows you to experience the long-term benefits of this practice. Consider setting up automatic transfers or using digital giving platforms to help you stay consistent. Third, give with the right heart. Remember, God is more concerned with our attitude than the amount. Give joyfully, not grudgingly or under compulsion. As 2 Corinthians 9:7 says, "Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver." Take time to cultivate a heart of gratitude and generosity. Fourth, be intentional about your giving. Don't just drop money in the offering plate without thought. Pray about where God wants you to give. This might be your local church, a missionary you support, or a charity doing important work in your community. Research the organizations you're giving to and understand how your contributions are being used. Fifth, keep track of your giving. This isn't about pride, but about accountability and seeing God's faithfulness over time. Many people who track their giving are amazed to see how God has provided for them and enabled them to be generous. It can also be helpful for budgeting and tax purposes. Sixth, remember that tithing and offering aren't just about money. While financial giving is important, we can also give of our time, talents, and resources. Look for ways to be generous in all areas of your life. Can you volunteer your skills to a local nonprofit? Can you use your influence to advocate for important causes? Generosity can take many forms. Seventh, educate yourself about financial management. Tithing works best when it's part of a broader approach to wise stewardship. Learn about budgeting, saving, and investing. Many churches and Christian organizations offer financial management courses that can help you make the most of your resources. Eighth, be patient and trust the process. The benefits of tithing and giving often unfold over time. Don't expect instant results, but rather cultivate a long-term perspective. Trust that as you align your finances with God's principles, you'll see fruit in your life, even if it doesn't always look the way you expect. Now, let's address some common questions and challenges people face when it comes to tithing and offerings. One frequent question is, should I tithe on my gross income or my net income? While opinions vary, many teachers suggest tithing on the gross, reasoning that we want to honor God with our first fruits, not what's left over after taxes. However, the most important thing is to give consistently and with a willing heart. If tithing on your gross income feels overwhelming, start with your net income and work towards gross as you're able. Another challenge is, what if I'm in debt? Should I still tithe? This is a sensitive issue, and it's wise to seek counsel from a pastor or financial advisor. Some suggest focusing on becoming debt-free first, while others advocate continuing to tithe while addressing debt, trusting God to provide. The key is to prayerfully seek God's guidance for your specific situation. Remember, God is more concerned with your heart and your overall financial health than with a specific percentage. Some people ask, is it okay to tithe to organizations other than my local church? Traditionally, the tithe was given to the local church, while offerings could be given to other causes. The reasoning behind this is that the local church is your primary spiritual community and source of teaching and support. However, if you don't have a local church, or if you feel led to give elsewhere, the most important thing is that you are giving and doing so with a heart to honor God. Consider discussing this with a trusted spiritual mentor or leader. A modern challenge many face is, how do I tithe on non-traditional income sources? In today's gig economy, many people have multiple income streams, some of which might be irregular. The principle remains the same. Give a percentage of whatever income you receive, whether it's from a regular job, freelance work, investments, or other sources. For irregular income, you might consider setting aside the tithe as you receive payments, then giving it at regular intervals. Another question that often arises is, what if my spouse doesn't agree with tithing? This can be a delicate situation, especially if you share finances. It's important to communicate openly and respectfully with your spouse about your convictions. If your spouse is not on board, consider starting with a smaller percentage that you both agree on, or tithing only on your personal discretionary income. Pray for unity in this area and seek to lead by example through your generosity in other areas of life. Some ask, is tithing a New Testament requirement? While the specific command to tithe is not repeated in the New Testament, the principles of generous and sacrificial giving are strongly affirmed. Jesus and the apostles taught extensively on the importance of generosity and the dangers of materialism. The early church practiced radical sharing of resources. So while the exact percentage may not be mandated, the heart behind tithing, recognizing God's provision and giving generously, is very much a New Testament principle. A practical question many have is, how do I budget for tithing? Start by tracking your income and expenses. Look for areas where you can cut back to make room for giving. You might be surprised at how much you can free up by eliminating unnecessary expenses. Consider tithing as a priority in your budget, setting it aside before other discretionary spending. Some find it helpful to have a separate account for their tithe to ensure it doesn't get mixed with other funds. Now, let's explore how the principles of tithing and offering can be applied in our modern context, beyond just our finances. In a world increasingly focused on consumption and instant gratification, the practice of tithing can be a powerful countercultural statement. It declares that we value generosity over greed, community over individualism, and eternal impact over temporary pleasure. By tithing, we're not just giving money, we're making a statement about what we believe and value. Moreover, the concept of first fruits, giving to God first before using the rest for ourselves, can be applied to other areas of our lives. For example, we can give God the first part of our day in prayer and Bible study. We can dedicate the first hours of our work week to serving others or volunteering. This principle of putting God first can revolutionize our priorities and transform our lifestyle. The practice of giving offerings above and beyond the tithe can also cultivate a lifestyle of generosity that extends beyond money. We can be generous with our time, our skills, our resources, and our encouragement. This kind of generosity creates a ripple effect, inspiring others and contributing to a more compassionate society. Imagine the impact if everyone lived with this level of open-handedness. In our digital age, we have unprecedented opportunities to give and make a difference. We can support causes and ministries around the world with the click of a button. We can use social media to raise awareness and funds for important issues. Crowdfunding platforms allow us to directly support individuals and projects in need. The principles of tithing and offering can guide us in being wise and intentional stewards of these digital opportunities. However, with these opportunities come challenges. The ease of online giving can sometimes lead to a disconnect between our giving and its impact. It's important to stay engaged with where our money is going and the difference it's making. Consider visiting local ministries you support or following the work of global organizations you give to. Many organizations now provide regular updates and even virtual tours to help donors see the impact of their giving. Another modern challenge is the increasing secularization of society. Many people, especially younger generations, are skeptical of religious institutions and may be hesitant to give to churches. If this resonates with you, remember that the principles of tithing and offering are not about supporting an institution, but about honoring God and helping others. Look for ways to give that align with your values and where you can see tangible impact. The gig economy and freelance work present both opportunities and challenges for tithing. On one hand, variable income can make consistent giving more challenging. On the other hand, it provides opportunities to trust God in new ways and to give creatively. Some freelancers choose to give a percentage of each project or to set aside a first fruits offering at the beginning of each month before other expenses. In our increasingly cashless society, it's worth considering how digital currencies and alternative forms of wealth might be tithed. While the Bible speaks of agricultural produce and livestock, the principle can be applied to any form of income or increase. This might mean tithing on cryptocurrency gains, stock options, or other non-traditional forms of compensation. The concept of tithing can also be applied to our use of time and energy. In a world where time is often our most precious resource, how might we tithe our time? This could mean dedicating a portion of our week to volunteering, mentoring, or serving in our community. It's a powerful way to live out the principle of giving our first fruits to God. Environmental stewardship is another area where the principles behind tithing can be applied. Just as tithing acknowledges God's ownership of our resources, we can acknowledge His ownership of the earth by being intentional about caring for the environment. This might involve tithing our consumption by reducing waste, or dedicating a portion of our resources to environmental causes. In the realm of business and entrepreneurship, the concept of tithing can inspire innovative approaches to corporate social responsibility. Some businesses choose to give a percentage of their profits to charitable causes, essentially tithing as an organization. Others build giving into their business model, such as companies that donate a product for every product sold. The digital age has also given rise to new forms of wealth creation, such as social media influencers and content creators. How might these individuals apply the principles of tithing? It could involve dedicating a portion of their platform to promoting worthy causes, or giving a percentage of their earnings from sponsored content. In education, the principle of first fruits could be applied by dedicating our best energy and focus to our studies or teaching, recognizing that our minds and learning opportunities are gifts from God. Students might consider how they can use their education to serve others, essentially tithing the knowledge and skills they gain. For those in creative fields, tithing might involve dedicating a portion of their creative output to projects that serve others or glorify God. This could mean a musician writing worship songs, an artist creating pieces for a local charity, or a writer contributing their skills to a nonprofit's communications. In the realm of health and fitness, we can apply these principles by dedicating our physical energy to serving others. This might involve participating in charity runs, using our physical abilities to help those in need, or teaching others about health and wellness as a form of giving back. For those blessed with influence or leadership positions, tithing might involve using that influence to advocate for important causes or mentor others. It's a recognition that our position and influence are gifts to be used for the benefit of others. In our relationships, we can apply the principle of giving our first fruits by prioritizing quality time with loved ones and being intentional about investing in our relationships. This might mean setting aside the first part of our evening for family time, or dedicating a portion of our week to deepening friendships. As we consider these various applications, it's important to remember that the heart behind tithing and offering is what matters most. It's not about legalistically applying a percentage to every area of life, but about cultivating a spirit of generosity and recognition of God's provision in all things. Now let's address some of the common objections and misconceptions about tithing and offerings. The church just wants my money. This cynical view fails to recognize the good work that many churches and religious organizations do in their communities and around the world. Most churches operate on tight budgets and rely on tithes and offerings to fund their ministries, maintain their facilities, and support their staff. Transparency in financial matters can help address this concern. I can't afford to tithe. This objection often comes from a place of fear or scarcity mindset. The reality is that many people who begin tithing find that they manage their remaining money more wisely. It's also worth remembering that tithing is meant to be an act of faith and trust in God's provision. Tithing is an Old Testament law that doesn't apply today. While it's true that tithing was part of the Old Testament law, the principles of generous giving and recognizing God's provision are affirmed throughout the New Testament. Jesus himself spoke about the importance of generosity and the dangers of materialism. I give in other ways, so I don't need to tithe. While giving of our time and talents is certainly valuable, financial giving is also important. Money is often a sensitive area in our lives, and giving financially can be a powerful way to trust God and break the hold of materialism. The Bible says to give in secret, so why does the church talk about tithing? While Matthew 6:4 does encourage giving in secret to avoid doing it for show, this doesn't mean we can't teach or talk about the principles of giving. The key is to maintain the right heart attitude. I don't trust religious organizations with my money. This is a valid concern, especially given some high-profile scandals. The solution is to do your research, ask for financial transparency, and give to organizations you trust. Remember, you can always start small and increase your giving as you build trust. I'll start tithing when I make more money. This mindset assumes that generosity is dependent on abundance, when in reality, generosity is a heart attitude that can be cultivated at any income level. Starting with small, consistent giving can help build the habit and trust for larger giving in the future. Tithing is just a way to make people feel guilty. When taught correctly, tithing should be presented as an opportunity for blessing and partnership with God, not as a guilt-inducing obligation. The emphasis should always be on the heart behind the giving, not just the amount. Let's also consider some real-life testimonies of people who have experienced the impact of tithing and generous giving. Sarah, a single mother of 2, shares, "When I first heard about tithing, I thought it was impossible. I was barely making ends meet. But I decided to trust God and start with 5%. To my amazement, I found that I was able to manage my finances better. And within a year, I was able to give the full 10%. It's taught me so much about trusting God and His provision." John, a business owner, says, "Incorporating tithing into my business model has completely transformed how I view success. It's no longer just about profits, but about how much impact we can make. We now give 10% of our profits to local charities, and it's energized our entire team. We feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves." Maria, a college student, shares, "I don't have much money, but I started tithing my time. I give 10% of my week to volunteering at a local shelter. It's changed my perspective on what's truly valuable and has even influenced my career choices." These stories remind us that tithing and generous giving can have a profound impact not just on our finances, but on our entire worldview and sense of purpose. As we wrap up our exploration of tithes and offerings, let's recap the key points we've covered. Tithing is the practice of giving 10% of our income to God, while offerings are voluntary gifts beyond the tithe. These practices are rooted in biblical principles and have been practiced for thousands of years. Tithing and offering are not just financial transactions, but spiritual practices that cultivate gratitude, trust in God, and a generous heart. The Bible promises blessings for those who tithe, but these blessings are not always financial and should not be the primary motivation for giving. Practical application of these principles involves starting where you are, being consistent, giving with the right heart, and being intentional about your giving. Modern challenges include questions about gross versus net income, tithing while in debt, and how to apply these principles in a digital age. The spirit of tithing and offering can be applied beyond finances to how we use our time, talents, and resources. Common objections to tithing often stem from misunderstandings or past negative experiences, but can be addressed through education and transparency. The principles behind tithing and offering can inspire innovative approaches to generosity in various areas of life, from business to environmental stewardship. Ultimately, tithing and offering are about cultivating a lifestyle of generosity and trust in God's provision. As we conclude, I want to challenge you to take a step of faith in this area. If you've never tithed before, consider starting this week, even if it's with a small percentage. If you already tithe, perhaps consider increasing your giving or finding a new cause to support with an offering. Remember, this journey of generosity is not about earning God's favor or manipulating Him for blessings. It's about aligning our hearts with His, acknowledging His provision in our lives, and participating in His work in the world. I'd love to hear about your experiences with tithing and offering. How has it impacted your life? What challenges have you faced? Share your stories in the comments below. Your testimony could be just the encouragement someone else needs to take a step of faith. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of tithes and offerings. I hope you've been inspired and equipped to apply these timeless principles in your life. Remember, true wealth isn't measured by what we keep, but by what we give away. In our next video, we'll be diving into the broader topic of Christian stewardship, how we can manage all of our resources in a way that honors God and serves others. You won't want to miss it, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel and have notifications turned on. Until next time, may you experience the joy of giving and the peace that comes from trusting in God's provision. God bless you, and I'll see you in the next video.